And you mentioned something about TweetDeck.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
TweetDeck is the best analogy I can use is, if you ever watch everybody's probably watched those travel show programs about Las Vegas, and they always show the security room in Las Vegas, with all the cameras. They've got all the. I look at TweetDeck as sort of the Las Vegas security camera room for Twitter. It allows you to open up all kinds of stuff on Twitter. You can see who's talking about barbecue recommendations, who's mentioning my small town of Orangeville, what are you up to this weekend? All this kind of stuff is going on. You just have to tap into these conversations. And the thing is that 10 years ago, these conversations were had in person.
Right.
You and I would sit down. I'd say, hey, I want to get a new barbecue. Do you have do you have a barbecue manufacturer that you like, or is there you recommend one? You poll a couple of your friends or whatever, and you get that recommendation. Now people are having these conversations on Twitter. So instead of having to be at top of mind and spend a fortune to be at top of mind, you can just say, no, I want to tap into these conversations as they're happening in the public, because people are moving these conversations online, and just intercept them, and you're catching buyers right at that decision point, and you can actually affect your bottom line by doing that.
That's really cool, because I think that it's sort of that new way of networking, a new way of marketing. We talked a little bit about the 140 character limit. It's hard to have a conversation at 140 characters, you would think, especially if it's it's not a two-way, right? It's not a full duplex type system. So when we think about that, how does somebody put their URL? If it's a really long URL and they want to link to their own PDF, for example, and PDF is 180 characters. How does somebody get that on Twitter?
Let me talk about two things.
Sure.
I want to touch on your 140 character limit, because a lot of people don't really think about this when they're sending out tweets. But I try and keep my tweets actually below 100 characters, or even at most 120 characters.
Why is that?
Because if you understand what Twitter is, you understand that one of the most important parts about sending out a tweet is if someone retweets your message. And retweet is Twitter speak for repeat. So basically, I send a message out to my 10,000 followers, and you have 5,000 followers, and you retweet or repeat my message. Now my message has been seen by 15,000 people, because your 5 and my 10 have seen it. So retweeting requires a little bit more to go into the tweet. When you retweet, your username and the retweet RT will come up. So you've got to actually make sure that you've left a little bit of bumper space. If you want a message that's going to be retweeted, you want to keep it around 120 characters maximum. So that's the first thing. And to answer your question about URLs, URL shorteners are obviously a big part of Twitter. If you don't know what that is, it just means if you've got a really long address to your website and you put it into a URL shortener, it actually creates what they call a redirect, and it's just a really short URL that another website manages for you, and it just, as soon as someone clicks it, it just takes them to your website. It's completely transparent to the end user, but it can shorten your 50-character website address down to 10 characters.
Yeah, but if you put your link on, what you really want is Google to be able to index your tweets. Can they index that shortener and understand that is going back to your website?
Google is indexing shortened URLs. There's been a lot of discussion about this. I read an article recently in Wired Magazine that talks about this kind of stuff a little bit, and they're definitely monitoring what's going on Twitter. Right. And so they're following these redirects. But one of the things to be careful with, and I'm a big fan of one of the services that does this, but a lot of shortener services will actually, they call it framing your website. You'll see like StumbleUpon is classic for this. They'll put a bar at the top of your website that says, I like this or whatever. That's not as friendly with Google as, say, like a Bitly or something like that, which is just a pure redirect straight to your website. So I do recommend, like Super is by StumbleUpon. I do like it because outside of Google, it provides me with some good StumbleUpon traffic, but they do frame you into that shortener, and I think that shortened URL link does, if it's going through a framed system, it does affect you a little bit.
Okay. You talked a little bit about having 10,000 followers, for example. Does the number of followers on Twitter matter?
A lot of debate around this topic, and of course, seeing that number, you want to see it grow all the time. People are like, I just want more followers. Well, usually when people want more followers, it's for one reason, because they want to spam them, right? So if you're all about getting your follower count up, it's probably because you want to be able to dump links later and get those people to visit your link. The reality is that there are software packages out there. You want 20,000 followers or 50,000 followers in the next couple of months, there's software that'll do that for you. But all it's doing is auto-following other software that auto-follows, and it just becomes this sort of robot army of zombie accounts that aren't real people. And so it's just a number. And the best way I can describe it is this. Imagine you are Richard Branson's business coach.
Okay.
Okay? And everyone knows Richard Branson, right? The guy's a billionaire. So let's say you're Richard Branson's business coach, and the only person who follows you on Twitter is Richard Branson. And you send out a message, and Richard Branson repeats it to his follower.
That's probably 1 million followers, maybe.
So you have one follower. Does it matter how many you have or how important they are?
It's sort of that sort of law of, yeah, it just sort of goes back and forth in terms of the amount of people that you know that has greater amounts of followers. I would probably use the analogy of organic searches, right? You want to be found organically. You want Google to be able to index you, for example, your website in such a way that you are being found by real people doing real searches, and so it doesn't become that mechanical robotical system in a sense, but it's real people who are listening to what you have to say
Yeah.
and following
Yeah.
what you are saying, rather than just some sort of magical number that everybody thinks is way more important.
I'd
than
rather
it
have
really
10 influential followers than 10,000 uninfluential.
Hmm.
And not that I don't mind having people that aren't influential, but I'm just saying that the number itself doesn't mean a whole lot. Just like in the real world, I remember I used to go to trade shows and people would brag about how many employees they had, and I used to always think that's kind of a stupid thing to brag about. Like, just because you have hundreds of employees doesn't mean you're successful. It could mean you're bleeding.
Right.
So having a certain number of followers doesn't dictate how good you are at social media. I think there are people out there with less than 1,000 followers who have a lot of really important things to say, or even less than 10 followers who have a lot of really important things to say. I hope that some of the people who are following them are listening and repeating it.
Yeah, and it's that whole repeating thing that really matters with the retweeting.
Yep.